The inspector, some kind of weird do-gooder with a curious amount of possibly supernatural knowledge, or Priestley's mouthpiece? Let's get you a higher grade. Stay tuned, Schofield, on Shakespeare.
Inspector Goole. Not Poole, as he was curiously renamed within the 1954 film version. Has splendid, disconcerting poise when he first enters the House of Smug. He doesn't rush into explaining the purpose of his visits and uses an impenetrable stare as a weapon to unsettle. Even more unsettling, of course, are his graphic, gruesome, matter-of-fact descriptions of Eva Smith's death. Inspector Goole knows that he is amongst a class of people largely disinterested in the plight of others and intensely suspicious of anything faintly resembling socialism. And so his aim is to get a reaction and, ideally, by the end of his visit, a more compassionate perspective on the world. As well as staring and using emotive language, the inspector is not afraid to interrupt his social superiors, something they are clearly not used to, and make broader statements about responsibility and class which clearly go beyond the scope of an investigation into the death of a single person. Some of his statements sound weightier and more profound due to biblical allusions. We are members of one body. We are responsible for each other, draws from Corinthians. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in one Spirit we are all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and all were made to drink. Whilst, and I tell you that the time will soon come when, if men will not learn that lesson, then they will be taught it in fire and blood and anguish, has echoes of the book of Revelations. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and these were thrown upon the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. The inspector is not overtly Christian, but does use these biblical allusions in a bid to propel the Burling family towards recognizing that some things are bigger and more important than the individual, society, community, and to threaten that selfish individualism could have catastrophic consequences for humanity, including them. These religious allusions are aimed at raising the stakes and forcing the family to think more seriously and deeply about their attitude towards others less fortunate than themselves. The inspector's final speech is, of course, deadly serious. However, there are earlier examples of some splendidly dry humour, for instance in his deliberate misreading of Eric's comment following a reference to golf. He is also clever not just in the way he manipulates Mrs. Burling into condemning her own son, but also in his deft use of antinoclasis to throw the family's words back at them so that they are forced to reassess their own attitude and prejudices. However, it is notable that once the inspector has set up an intense, highly charged atmosphere in which behaviour and attitudes can routinely be challenged, to some extent he's able to sit back and let other family members take on this work. He wants the family members to challenge and confront each other, to come close to violence even, because this is the only way genuine long-term change may occur. Of course, the younger generations are less fixed in their mindsets and are more open to the idea of this change. Whereas with the likes of Mr. and Mrs. Burling, the inspector appears to have had no influence whatsoever. The final twist at the end of the play, as well as the fact Gerald establishes that he was not actually a police officer, begs the question, who or what was Inspector Goole? Well, changing the spelling of his surname to Goole, as in Ghoul, offers one interpretation. Could he be a non-human, supernatural force able to predict the future, in this case the death by suicide of a vibrant young woman? Here's Professor John McRae from the University of Nottingham. He much prefers to see Inspector Goole as a probing voice of conscience. He feels the inspector is undermining the complacency, the self-satisfaction, the false security of this family and their house. McRae is witheringly dismissive about any possible idea that the inspector might represent God. But nonetheless, how would an ordinary human voice of conscience be able to predict the timing of a genuine suicide by drinking disinfectants? Fortunately, I'm not an expert, but I would imagine that this wouldn't be the kind of plan you would share with someone beforehand. If Inspector Goole knew that a particular person was on the verge of committing such an excruciatingly painful act of self-destruction, then he sure as hell wouldn't be wasting his time with the Burlings. My own view is that the twist at the end of the play provides great drama and is intended to make us think. It sees the play moving from realistic drama to something more allegorical. Whereas previously the spotlight was on the gruesome death of a named, indeed multiple named individual, the fact that Gerald has unwittingly implicated himself following his suspicious phone call to the infirmary means that he and the Burling family as a whole may be implicated in the death of someone they may not even be conscious of meeting. And this is Priestley's points. Those of a higher class and those with the means to do so need to think far more deeply about the unknown suffering masses, not just those they have had the occasional interaction with. Is society set up to give everyone a fair chance? This more open-ended ending to the play hammers home the point that we shouldn't just be thinking about one abused, tragic individual, but the millions and millions and millions of Eva Smiths and John Smiths still left with us. She'd been taken there this afternoon because she'd swallowed a lot of strong disinfectant. Burnt her inside out, of course. Cutting through massively. There are millions and millions and millions of Eva Smiths and John Smiths still left with us. We are members of one body. We are responsible for each other. And I tell you that the time will soon come when, if men will not learn that lesson, then they will be taught it in fire and blood and anguish.
With longing, going home, the skies are deeper blue. And
Oh, watch Susie, she's simply on fire tonight. Well, they won't boo her off the stage.
longing when I'm back at home with you.
If you have found this video helpful, please do subscribe if you'd like to, or click on the like button or write a comment. My channel, Schofield on Shakespeare, has more than 300 videos aimed at helping students love English literature and language at GCSE and A-level and access the highest grades. For GCSE, do check out my other videos on Jekyll and Hyde, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, Great Expectations, plus the language videos giving tips and suggestions for creative writing. Many thanks for watching Schofield on Shakespeare.